It's a recipe for disaster and you will rue the day. Today I thought I would show you guys how I get the most out of my Pat McGrath Labs eyeshadows, or just eyeshadow in general. So I'm going to show you guys tips and tricks that I have kind of come across along the way watching probably millions and millions of makeup tutorials over the years, to be honest with you, and how I kind of integrate them into my kind of eyeshadow routine. Now before we go ahead and get stuck into the meat and potato of the video, if you will, let's go ahead and do the YouTubey things. Go ahead and give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, hit that notification bell, and let's get into it. You guys are zoomed in really nice and close, almost offensively close. Enjoy this texture and redness. I have like an itchy nose, so if it's super red, that's why. Now I am going to create a look today. It is completely inspired by my girl at Empties Make Me Happy over on Instagram. If you guys want the everyday wearable Pat McGrath inspo at your fingertips, go and follow Patty because she's a legend and she creates the best looks. And I'm going to use Divine Rose 1 because it has all of the formulas in it that we could need. So how this is going to work is I am going to cover off on like tips and tricks that I have before you even start applying your eyeshadow. Then we're going to apply the eyeshadow together and we're going to talk about the tips and tricks from there. Okay? Okay. I will leave timestamps down below for you guys. This is 100% going to be a long video, so settle on in, but hopefully you find it helpful or enjoyable in some way. I do want to give a couple of disclaimers first. So again, timestamps are there if you don't want to hear them, but I recommend watching them in case you're going to drop a comment about it down below. First of all, I am not a professional makeup artist. I haven't been to makeup artist school, etc. and so forth. I'm not pretending to be. I am very much self-taught by watching millions upon millions of YouTube videos over the past however many years. I have watched a really big amount of makeup artist YouTube videos, and that's pretty much where I get majority. I do get some of my stuff from influencers, but I get majority of my tips and tricks or my technique, etc. from watching makeup artists, from Patrick Tar to Hung Van Gogh to Lisa Aldridge to Makeup by Ariel to Makeup by Mari, any makeup artist, Andrea Ali. I watch them all, I have binged them all, I love them. So that is where like my knowledge comes from, but I am not pretending to be an expert in any way, shape or form. Secondly, just remember these are all my opinions and how I personally find to get the best like out of my eyeshadow, for example. So if you vibe with my makeup technique, etc., then hopefully this will be really helpful for you. If not, hopefully you just have a good old time. But it's okay if you don't feel the same way as me. That's fine. We're all entitled to our own opinion, but we can be nice about it. And also, this is obviously based off of my opinion because it's my channel. And then lastly, I do just really want to stress that even though I am talking about Pat McGrath Labs eyeshadows in this video, one, it will translate across all eyeshadow application, and two, I am in no way saying that Pat's eyeshadow formula is bad, because I would not have purchased every single one of her Motherships and pretty much every release that she has come out with since I've discovered her if I didn't think that way. I truly adore her eyeshadow formula. I think it's amazing. I think anyone can use it. I'm gonna just show you guys different ways that you can use them to get the most out of them, so that I've always say this on my channel, these are expensive palettes and I want you guys to get the most use out of them that you possibly can. And if these tips and tricks can help you in any way, shape or form to do that, then happy days. The next part of this video, we're going to talk about tips and tricks before we even pick up our little eyeshadow palette here. So number one, I recommend, depending on the eyeshadow look that you are doing, depending on the formula that you are using, I do recommend actually doing your eyeshadow before your makeup base. Now, if you go back like probably 4 or 5 months, I can't remember when I started not doing it, I used to like get very passionate about the fact that I never wanted to do my eyes before my base. Very passionate about it, okay, you guys? And it was just annoying to me, but I always kind of would notice at the end my base would look good and then I'd do my eyeshadow and it just didn't look as good, because naturally, regardless of the formula and brand, you are just going to get a little bit of fallout over your face from applying eyeshadow, because it's a powder. That's gonna happen, you know what I mean? And I have found along the way that definitely switching and doing my eyes first makes the biggest difference to my base makeup at the end. It makes my base makeup a lot more flawless. So if you're someone that is having that problem with fallout, then potentially just even switching that routine around in that way, doing eyes first and then base, that might solve all of your problems. So that is tip number one. Tip number two is all about the makeup brushes that you use. I'm not here to sell you guys anything or shove anything down your throat or tell you that you must spend X amount of money. However, I will say, and I also believe that a lot of makeup artists say this because I've heard them, if you are applying makeup regularly and you really do want the best application you can get, I do strongly recommend investing when you can in a good quality brush set, because it really does make the world of difference to your makeup application, I promise you. Now, that doesn't mean that there's some cheaper brushes that don't work well, because they do. They work well. Especially, like, I have a hell of a lot of BH Cosmetics and Real Techniques brushes, like face brushes. They're amazing. I absolutely love them. However, I personally believe that when it comes to eyeshadow application, investing in good quality brushes is going to make the biggest difference to your game. Now, my number one recommendation is a natural hair brush. So I have Rephr and What's Up Beauty. Now, between these two, they're both very good quality. I do recommend Rephr the most, just because I do find them to be ever so slightly softer. So these are Rephr brushes. I do have a review of these on my channel as well, so I'll link that down below for you guys. I've been using Rephr for quite some time. I love them. I adore them. They hold up really well under washing, and they're really good for fellow hooded eye people because of the shape of them. They're quite small and they're tapered, so you are going to get that better application, especially if you have hooded eyes. If you don't have hooded eyes though, they also have other brushes that are suited to like non-hooded eyes, but you can still use these, you know what I mean? I will say, if you can afford both, I highly recommend both, because the What's Up Beauty brushes have different shapes to the Rephr ones, and some of these shades are glorious, so I will say that. They're the only two natural hair brands that I have tried, so obviously I can't recommend anything that I haven't tried, but I can tell you that going from natural hair versus synthetic hair, there is a dramatic difference. When I used natural hair brushes for the first time, the level up in my eyeshadow game and the ease and time it took for me to create an eyeshadow look was incredible. Like, genuinely, like, mouth hitting the ground, shocked at the difference. I never ever thought there was going to be. I was always one of those people that was, whatever, I doubt it. I doubt there's that much of a difference. There is a hell of a lot of difference. There is something about natural hair and the way that it disperses the powder, especially over your lids, and blends it out. It is incredible. It makes your job so much easier, so much quicker. It's kind of foolproof, to be completely honest with you. I do, however, completely understand and recognize there are a lot of people out there that do not want to use natural hair brushes in any way, shape or form, and I completely appreciate that. The only brushes because I have quite a lot of vegan brushes in my collection. In fact, the Rephr and the What's Up Beauty ones are the only ones that are natural hair in my collection. The rest are vegan. Out of all of my vegan brushes, this is the only brush company that I have tried that I personally recommend for using with your eyeshadow. It's the closest to natural hair I personally have ever come across. Just keeping in mind, again, that I haven't tried absolutely everything out there, you know what I mean? But this is the Bdellium Tools brushes. This is specifically the Golden Triangle set, and this is the brush set that I would highly recommend for you guys if you don't want to try a natural hair brush set. These are incredibly soft and incredibly high quality brushes, and they're definitely the next best thing that you can get that I have tried after natural hair brushes. And I will say, just keep an eye on the Bdellium Tools website, because quite often they will do like 40 to 50% off their brush sets. So just keep an eye out for them, because you can get them on a heavy discount, and I highly recommend all of their Golden Triangle brushes. I do have all of these linked down below in my description box too as well, if you are wondering, and any reviews or anything I'll also pop down below for you. Now, there are two brushes specifically that I do want to point out to you guys, because I do think that these two brushes make the biggest difference to your metallic shadow application, and that is these two shader brushes right here. So the first one that I recommend is the Rephr number 2 from Rephr, and it is a natural hair kind of, you can see it's like almost a little bit thicker. It's not that like super flat. It's having trouble focusing on it, sorry, hopefully this will help. It's not that like super flat kind of shader brush, but that's what makes this so good, because it is that ever so slightly bit like fluffier. It really does just like pick up that metallic shadow and hold it really well in the brush to disperse perfectly and pigmentedly over your lids. This little bad boy is an absolute magician. I adore him. At some point I will pick up like 4 or 5 of him, truly, because this is the only brush I mainly use for all of my metallic shadows. It really is the best brush I have found to pick up the metallic shadow from the pan and actually translate what it looks like in the pan to your eyelid. It's truly incredible. The other one, which is a vegan shader brush, is the Bdellium Tools 775 Duo Fiber Shader Brush. And it's the fact that this is a duo fiber brush that makes this so good. So it has that like dispersed bristle up here. But again, because of the way that this brush is shaped and formed with the duo fiber here, it really does pick up that metallic shadow and really lock it in and then disperse it over your lid really well. The reason why I like this one more is when you want a more opaque application of a shadow, then you want to go for something like this one. When you want a more dispersed, softer application of that metallic shadow, then you want to go for something like this one. This one with the glitter shades from Pat McGrath Labs as well is really good when you just really actually want them to be glittery and not more opaque. This one will pick that product up really well and disperse it quite lovely over the eyelid, whereas this one might pack it on a little bit more opaquely. So we'll talk about that later on in different applications, etc. But I do just want to say these are the only 2 brushes that I pretty much use for all of my metallic shadow application or my finger. They're pretty much it. If I have to use another one, it's either because these are dirty, usually because these are dirty, or sometimes I have like smaller ones where I can like really get in the inner corner, but it is never the same application. It never is. The other tip that I have is either getting yourself one of these, which is from Sigma Beauty, or just getting yourself some regular old-fashioned paper towels. The reason why I suggest this, you could also get a color switch, but I just think this one might be a little bit softer on your brushes. But this little mat right here, which is double-sided, I will link it down below for you guys, is really good for wiping excess product off your brushes, but also like taking the shade off your brush. So say you only have like one brush and you want to use it for multiple shades, then this will take that color, like the color off in between color changes. That probably made no sense. But basically all you do is it has kind of like different like little purposes. So this is for eyeshadow, this is for eyeshadow. This one it says is for cream. Oh no, so sorry, eyeshadow, cream products. Like this one is blush or like powder, and then this one is like cream bronzer or bronzer in general. I just use them for like whatever, to be honest with you. But just like being able to kind of just gently flick my brush through here and take off any excess eyeshadow, or just take off the color completely from the brush and then go in with a different color. One, I don't have to wash my brushes as much, which is better for natural hair because it's gonna ruin them a lot quicker. But 2, it just allows me to like apply my eyeshadow better, and I'll explain why shortly. But if you don't want to pick up one of those mats, or you can't, just get yourself some paper towels, and then you can just honestly like just wipe it on the paper towel when you're kind of done, etc. And then last but not least, before we get into the actual application of the eyeshadow, is eye primer. So I never used to use eye primer. I used to always use concealer and set it with powder. And I came across a Robert Welsh video, which if I can find it, I will link it down below. If any of you have watched Robert Welsh, let me know if you know which video I'm talking about. It was 2 years ago that I watched this video, and he went on a massive rant about why you should use eye primer and not use concealer and powder. And when I watched it, I was like, that makes 110% complete sense to me. And now I'm gonna go get an eye primer, and I have never looked back since. It all has to do with the fact that like concealer is designed to be like smoothing over the eye, so when you put eyeshadow over that, it's not gonna grip, adhere, or blend out as well. Whereas eye primers are designed to kind of like enhance the eyeshadow, bring out more pigment, make it more long wearing, easier to blend, etc. He explains this so much better, so I'm just gonna try and find the video, okay? I do have to admit, hand on heart, I promise you hand on heart, that ever since I changed to an eye primer instead of doing concealer, again, my eyeshadow game just exploded. And I will challenge you that if you have tried an eye primer before and you're like, I just don't know if you found the eye primer for you specifically, because I had tried like the Urban Decay, the Milani one, the Fenty one. I feel like there's a couple, a Laura Mercier one, a Sigma one. I had tried a heap of eye primers before and I was always just kind of like, they're okay or I hate them. And it wasn't until I found these two for me specifically that I was like, yep, this is 100% game changing. So the first one that I tried was the NARS Smudge Proof Eye Primer. I really like this. I really recommend it. I think it's great. But the one that I would recommend over it is the Makeup by Mario one, purely because you do get the two eye primers. They're more skin tone colors, so you can, like, they come in different shades, so you can kind of create whatever you need. And then you have the powder to set them if you do need to set it with powder, or you don't, like, you can or you cannot set it with powder, you know what I mean? But you have it all in the one for the same cost versus like the one tube. But I do really like this one, especially if you do just prefer like the cream, or you know, I like having both in my collection. Sometimes depending on the formula with the NARS one, you do need to set it with a powder. Like this one, for example, with Pat McGrath Labs eyeshadows, I don't know what it is about the formula, but I find it works so much better if I set it with a powder versus if I don't. Whereas like with Natasha Denona formula, it's completely fine. So I'm not a chemist. I don't know what's going on there, but that's what I find. So let's go ahead and actually start applying some eyeshadow now, shall we? This is probably a million years long. Okay, I am actually gonna go in with my Mario eye primer today. I have put down actually a Marc Jacobs concealer just to kind of like create an even skin tone for my eyelids, and I have put brow gel through the brows. So I just go into a mix of both of these colors just with like, this is a Bdellium Tools 934 brush, which is my fave for it, but you can use any kind of flat shader brush, doesn't really matter. And I just tap it up here. I don't go all the way up. I do just tap it kind of like up to where I would blend my eyeshadow out. And then I just take my sponge and tap it out. And then I just kind of pick up a fluffy flat brush and go into the powder, and I just set the lid. I like to do the typical generic, go in with my lightest shade, go down to my darkest, put the metallic on, etc. Any of you that have watched my eyeshadow videos or tutorials before, same gig every time, you know the deal. There are a couple of different types of brushes that you can use to apply like your first kind of shade down. You can use something like this one from Bdellium Tools, which is more like a domed kind of like blending brush, so it's not tapered in any way, shape or form, and when you kind of blend this out over the eyes, it's just going to like disperse the product quite evenly and like in a larger surface area. I personally like to use my Rephr 16 or a brush that's similar to this shape. You can see that it's quite tapered, so it has that pointy end at the top of it, and the reason for that is I can concentrate majority of the product onto that tip. I can put that into where I would like to create my crease, because remember, when you have hooded eyes, you kind of have to blend your eyeshadow out above where your like fold would be, because if I just did it like here where my actual fold is, which I know to you guys looks like I'm looking down, but to me I'm actually looking straight ahead. Angles. You wouldn't see any eyeshadow, so it's like, what's the point, you know? So I like to create a faux crease, as you potentially have heard me say before. And so using a tapered point like this allows me to kind of center my brush and create like a anchor point, let's call it. And then I can essentially start from here and either use windscreen wiper motions like this, or do my squirreling, as we'll get to. And that anchor point is going to concentrate the most amount of pigment there. And then the brushes that are on the side here that don't have as much pigment are actually just going to do all of the blending for me. And I don't really need to work that hard to blend it out, because they're gonna just naturally create that dispersion. This one will still do that. It will just do it over a larger surface, and also depending on how much shadow you put on, you might just have to work a little bit harder to kind of disperse the blend as well. Depends on how big your eyes are. If you have very small eyes, this is not gonna work for you at all, but if you have large eyes, then this will work really well. We're gonna start with the lighter shade here. We're gonna go into this purple here, and I just kind of dip my brush in like this. One of the biggest tips that I recommend, and you would have heard this a million times before, for any eyeshadow application is you start small and you build, because you can always put eyeshadow on or makeup on, but you cannot take it off. So you don't want to go in and like dip your brush in really hard and bang that all over your eyelids, because then, you know, you're going to be there for a while blending that out. But specifically with Pat McGrath Labs mattes, if you start heavy, you're probably not going to blend that out to a level that you're going to be happy with. Natasha Denona, you'll be there for a while, but you'll be able to get away with it. But Pat McGrath Labs, you will not. Like, it will not blend for you if you do that, at least in my opinion. So start small. And this is where your little mat, like your paper towel, your mat comes in handy, because you can kind of just like dab any potential excess eyeshadow off, which I would recommend doing every single time you apply it to your eye, regardless of the step and how much you need. Because it is going to create a more even, soft application, because you want to do light layers and build. It's just like our face, light layers and build. Depending on the look that you're going for is going to be dependent on the technique that you use. If you're doing a halo eye, that's going to be very different to what the kind of look is that I'm doing today. So I'm going to do the standard look that I do for my hooded eyes, because no matter what color I use, formula I use, etc., if I do this look on the everyday, it's very quick and easy for me to do. It's very like, I don't have to think about it. It suits my eye shape, and Bob's your uncle. So that's what we're going to do. So what I like to do is, I have downturned eyes as well, I should mention. So I actually like to create an almond shape lifted eye look, so that I don't look like I'm constantly like either sad or tired, because especially with my pigmentation under eyes, I already look sad and tired, okay? I don't need to add anything to the equation. So I'm gonna stick this into this socket here, and a lot of the time you'll see me do this and you probably think, oh my God, that must hurt. It does not hurt. But this is where I wanna create that faux look. If you have no idea where your crease is supposed to be, tip your head back like this and you'll naturally see the socket of your eye, and that's where you wanna create that crease. So stick it in here. And I like to, what I like to call swirling motions, or swirl, which is a mixture of squiggling and swirling. Because what this is going to do, see how this is dispersing my product? See how majority of the product is concentrated here, but it's blending out itself upward. See that? That's exactly what I want to do, because I want the darkest portion of this eyeshadow to be in the crease here, because if it's going to be slightly darker there, it's going to create the illusion of a faux crease, contouring, right? But I also want to disperse it, because I don't just want like a block line there. I mean, you might, but I don't. And so the swirling, especially starting with the outer corner and not bringing this any forward in, is creating that lifted look. Can you see that? It's just creating it, it's lifted, it's creating almost that soft wing for me. I don't have to do any work whatsoever, and that's why I really like these tapered brushes as well, because the domed one from Bdellium Tools doesn't do the same thing. Once I'm happy with this blend, see how it's all blended here as well? This is when I'm just going to ever so slightly just bring this forward, and this is when I do like to kind of tip my head back or lift my brows up quite high, because I still know that I need that crease to follow here. But if I'm not careful and I keep my eyes too relaxed, then I am going to put too much shadow in that spot, because I kind of want to get less shadow as I go down here, because for me in particular, it just creates like a real heavy look, and I don't need that in my life. And then basically you just keep going until you're at a point where you're happy with the blend, and that's kind of how you want it. Do you know what I mean? The other thing that I did not mention that hopefully you haven't started yet and can apply is feather light touches, my friends. Feather light touches. I can't stress this tip enough. If the one thing that you take away from this is a light pressure, job done. So if you are someone that goes in, and it's all about how you hold your brush as well. Okay, so again, none of this might be new to you guys, but I'm just gonna recap it. If you hold your brush down here like a pen, you are naturally, no matter how hard you try, going to apply a heavier pressure than you should to your application. It's just gonna happen. It's like a pen. It's like, you know, even the way that you hold that is like a lot more clenched, and it like hurts your hand. So to get a softer application, you wanna hold your brush all the way back here, because you are not gonna be able to press as hard as you would if you hold your brush down here, okay? And trust me, we've all had the days where we're in a rush and we wanna pick up as much shadow as quickly as we can and furiously blend it out on our eyes as quickly as we can so that we can get out the door. I get it. I get it. But if you do that, you are just, it's a recipe for disaster and you will rue the day. I promise you. You just need feather light touches and building amounts of pigment, and it is going to get you everywhere. The other thing that I wanted to mention was also, if you are someone that's like, no, I'm not doing my eyes first, sister friend, I'm always doing my base first, that's cool. That's just when you especially want to make sure that you are going in with very, very, very light layers and building, because the reason why you will tend to get a lot of fallout, not always, but sometimes a lot more fallout, is if you are putting too much pigment on at one time. So that's when you especially want to build instead of packing it on, you know what I mean? Also, I was thinking as I was doing this that I should have probably done like all of the do not kind of things that I recommend on this side, but I actually have to work today, so I can't do that, sorry. Okay, so the next shade that we're going to go into is this shade right here, which is a darker brown, and this is where we're deepening the crease or defining the crease a little bit further. Now I'm going in with an R103, yeah, R103, so this is a What's Up Beauty. Again, you can see it's tapered, but you can see compared to the Rephr 16 how much smaller it is, and that's the thing is, as you go down in shades from lightest to darkest, you want to go smaller in brushes, because if I was to go in with that Rephr 16 with that color, don't mind my nails by the way, they're gross, I need to like repaint them. If I was to go in with the darker color on that Rephr 16, I'm just literally recreating the exact same step that I just did, but over the shadow that we just laid. So it would be like, what was the point of this shadow then? Because it's just going to cover it exactly. It's the exact same shape brush. So just want to make sure as you go down, you use a smaller brush. With the darker shade, I pick it up, I tap the excess off, we start small, we build, same steps. I always pack my dark shadow onto the outer corner first because that's where I want the depth, is right here. And then depending on the look is going to be dependent on how forward I'll bring it. Sometimes I'll literally just stop there, and that's it. And you can see I've kind of stopped like right halfway here, and that's all I'll do. Otherwise, I'll tilt my head back and lift my brows at the same time and really softly bring that forward. Like, I don't even know if you can kind of see how soft, you won't be able to see how soft I'm going. But again, it's about that slow build and soft feather light touches, because again, if you're gonna go in heavy with your brush or your pigment, especially with Pat McGrath mattes, it is going to get patchy on you. So you just need to use a feather light touch. Now what I do is I go back into the original brush that we used for the very first color. I have no excess color on here whatsoever. And now I just want to go to where we originally put that crease, and I'm going to blend really softly over it and taper it up a little bit. Very, very softly again. Because now it's just going to marry those two colors together and create a more softly diffused blend. So they're the biggest tips that I find with using Pat McGrath Labs matte shadows in particular. Nothing revolutionary. You guys are probably watching this going, I did not learn anything. My biggest tip is primer, natural hair brush, the lightest pressure, okay? The lightest pressure you can possibly think of, and start slow with the pigment and build. Okay, that is what you need to do. You cannot go in with a lot of pigment. You cannot go in with a heavy hand and expect it to just blend out with Pat. It's not going to end well for you. You just really need to soften your touch. And if you go in too heavy with a hand, like your hand, like too much pressure, that's when you're going to create that skipping on the eye. So if you're getting that skipping on the eye with the eyeshadow, it's because you're using too much pressure and you need to go softer. And you will get to a point where you're like, is she really talking about this soft of a pressure? I'm barely touching my eye. If you're barely touching your eye, you've hit the nail on the head. Let's go ahead and move on to metallics. So Pat has multiple different metallic formulas, as do a lot of different other brands, and it's going to depend on the application. If you're gonna use just like her standard metallic formula, it's pretty much up to you. Her standard metallic formula right here is really just going to apply like any other metallic formula, to be honest with you. I just find they're more pigmented and creamy. I'm just biased, let's be real. But really the world is your oyster. My tips and tricks for a standard metallic formula is the same as all my other videos. I recommend putting down, if you're using a metallic shadow, I recommend putting down some kind of a base if you can. So either the Pat McGrath Labs Intensify stick, pop that over the lid. You've seen me use this a heap of times, or even just like a glitter glue. This is just the Milk Makeup Eye Primer. I find it's better for glitter glue than it is for the eye primer. Or you can get the NYX glitter glue, whatever it is. You could even put concealer down at this point if you really wanted to, just something that's going to create a tacky surface, because if you think about it, if you put down a tacky surface on your lid, it's going to stick better, it's going to stick longer, it's going to be more opaque, it's just going to be overall a better application and finish. However, some people don't want to do that, they don't want to spend the money on it, they don't want to fuss around with that, all of that jazz. Totally get it. If you are in a rush or you don't want to do those steps for whatever reason that is applicable to you, that is when I recommend either getting like a spritz of like a water bottle or something, like a spray water bottle, or your setting spray. This is just the NYX Dewy setting spray. And pick it up with, like, pick the metallic up with your brush and spray it with some water or setting spray, and then apply it to your lid, because it is going to, again, it's just going to kind of make the formula a little bit more creamy and opaque for the application on your eye. It's going to create that more like vavoom look for the metallic shadow, and it will also create it a little bit more long wearing as well. After all of that, if you're like, I'm still not here for it, girlfriend, I don't even want to do that, pick it up with your finger and pop it on your lid. It's still going to be beautiful because the shadow is going to warm up with the temperature of your hand. So it is still going to create that like emollient, like creamy type formula. It's still going to be super opaque on the lid, but it just doesn't have that like sticky base that it will create a little bit more long wearing. So depending on how hooded your eyes are is probably also going to depend on how you feel about that step as well. The more hooded your eyes are, if you need a glitter glue, I'm sorry, you just do. If you just go in with a dry brush and a metallic on your lid without a base, you're not going to get the same finish. So I'm actually what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you the difference here. I know you didn't see me do that whole process because I actually just don't even know how I could do that better, but I'm sure one of you will tell me. This one right here is with the Intensify stick laid down underneath it, and then that is the finger swatch over the top of it. This one is with a wet brush. So I picked it up on the dry shader brush, sprayed the brush with my dewy setting spray, and then applied it. Doesn't apply it as well on the back of the hand, I will say, as what it does on the lid, because I would use tapping motions. This is just my finger swatch blended out. Gonna look slightly different again on your eye. All of these will look slightly different on the eye, to be fair, because this is also warming up to the back of my hand, so just keep that in mind. And then this one down here is with just a dry brush, and it's quite sad. I don't know why my camera just won't focus at all. Here we go. So this one is with a dry brush, and it definitely applied the saddest. So I kind of recommend applying metallics with a dry brush as like a last resort, if I'm honest, but you do you. As I said, I am going to lay down my Intensify stick onto 3/4 of my lid here, because I would do this regardless of, sometimes if I'm in a really quick hurry, I will just pop it on with my finger. It just depends on how much of a hurry I'm in, but I always do usually put down some kind of a base. I prefer my Intensifies over this Milk one because this one can slightly burn my eyes depending on the day and how sensitive my eyes are. That's a me thing. So now what we're gonna do is we're actually going to go into Pat's special shades. So again, it's the steps that I personally take probably seem like this formula is hard work. It's really not. It's really, really not. I do these steps to get the maximum effect, the maximum pigment, the maximum whatever it is that I'm looking for that day, and also the maximum longevity on my eyes, especially with hooded eyes. They're gonna come off if I don't do that, okay? Now the application for Pat's kind of more metallic special shades, so these ones right here instead of this one, this is more of like the kind of glittery, Astral-y type ones, whereas these are, I don't even know what kind of formula they are, but they're magical. These you can apply really honest to God truly in the exact same kind of way as you would her metallic shadows. It's a very, very, very similar formula, and I don't personally get any form of glitter fallout from those particular formula. It's more of the Astral like VR shades that you're gonna get that glitter fallout. I always go in with my Rephr number 2 and I pick up some of the shades. So I'm gonna go into the gold like this, and I kind of just like tap my brush in. Again, you don't want too much, but you're gonna want more of the metallic shade than you are with mattes. With metallics, we're not concerned about the level of pigment that goes on the brush in terms of blendability, because we're not going to blend the metallic out like we are a crease shade. With the metallics, we're more concerned about opacity and pigment onto the lid, depending for the look that you're going for. And the reason why you want to start slow and build to a certain degree with metallics is more based around fallout on the face than it is around anything else. So again, the more pigment that you pick up on your brush, depending on the formula, but really doesn't matter, the more fallout you're gonna have, right? So I always pick up quite a bit of a metallic shadow, and then I, again, will always just tap a little bit of excess off. What I'm gonna do is, I haven't wet this brush, and I'm just going to tap this over where I've laid the intensifiers down, and I will basically pick up more pigment, do one tap on like my paper towel or something to tap off any excess, and then apply again until I'm happy with the application. And the biggest tip with like metallic shadows, but especially the more special or any crumbly type metallic formula, don't swipe. Okay, if you swipe, you're gonna get fallout. If you swipe, you're not gonna get the opacity that you want. What you need to do is pressing, patting motions. So see how I just kind of like tap where I want the shadow. Can you guys see that? And see how it's so opaque? And you just kind of keep tapping until you have no kind of color left on the brush, and then you have to like dip in and get more. And you just tap it wherever you want that shadow to go. Now, if fallout is a really big deal to you guys, what you want to do is get your brush, pick up the color like you would, do one tap to get any like huge amount of excess off, and then wet your brush. And if you do that, it is going to minimize the maximum amount of fallout that you can possibly minimize, because not only have you created a sticky base, you've also wet the brush, so it's going to like melt that product into it more and going to stop any kind of fallout that you might get. And I will do this quite often than not, because even if I'm doing my base last, I still really just don't want to take a makeup wipe all over my face if I can handle it. You don't need to spray the brush again as well, like in between each use, until you feel it gets a little bit dry and you can feel that fallout, because it will hold that dampness there for you when you pick up more product. Let's talk about the glittery shades, because I feel like this is where everyone's pain point comes from. So for Divine Rose 1, it's Astral Solstice here, which is also in Midnight Sun. And then say, for example, you were using Subliminal or something like, Subliminal, Bronze Seduction, I feel like Midnight Sun, all of them have these kind of like white glittery shade, but also a colored glittery shade. So this is Subliminals, where it is more of a color, more of an opaque, but still it won't swatch like it, but it's still very, very flaky and kind of glittery. There are different ways that you can use these kind of glittery special shades, yeah? The number one like easy way that you can use them is by now, like if you wanted to put some little extra sparkle on, which sometimes you just need a little extra vavoom. And in fact, you saw me do this in one of my most recent Pat videos, where I'll link it down below, but it was the look that I used, like the Bridgerton palette and the Bronze Seduction palette, and I used a heap of different palettes. And you saw me at the end go into Bronze Seduction and pick up this version of the red shade in that and tap it ever so slightly over the look to create just this little extra added sparkle and shift to the look. And that's what you might want to do. So in that case, what you want to do is just press your finger in once and softly tap that over the lid, very, very, very softly, okay? What you do need to keep in mind if you are gonna do something like that is that you are probably gonna get a bit of glitter fallout, because you have popped like a glitter essentially. Even though it's quite a soft, like finely milled glitter, it's still a glitter. It is going to create that kind of crumbly kind of fallout vibe. The other way that you can use that is you can also use these kind of crumbly glittery shades, and you can make them more opaque and kind of change the shift in the formula of them by making them more opaque. And that's going to depend on how there's a couple of different techniques that you can use that for as well. So you either want to go that like sheer glittery side, or you want to make them more opaque and like vavoom, right? If you wanted to do this over the top of your metallic, because obviously you could just pop a soft transition shade through the crease and then tap a glitter over the lid to create a very soft wearable look, right? In that case, you could just put intensifiers down or a glitter glue down and tap it over the top, and it's still going to give you that effect, but it's going to have a base to grip to. If you have done this look already and you want that vibe, but you've done this, that's when you want to get yourself the Intensify stick. And the reason why I say specifically the Intensify stick is that Pat McGrath formulated this to go under and over eyeshadow. So what you can do, now mine is like feral because clearly I use it a lot. So I'm actually just gonna make sure any like gross colors are off it because it's gonna ruin my eyeshadow. So what you can actually do is take your Intensify stick and you can pop this over the top of this metallic shade right here. See? I'd probably actually recommend putting it on a brush and then tapping it on so that you don't ruin the thing. Now that will change like the effect of it slightly. I find it like dulls it down ever so slightly, but it's up to you. But now you have a sticky base, yeah? So now you can tap your finger in with that glitter, press it on to that shadow, and you've got a sticky base. And it is going to create the least amount of fallout. It will create like probably, I don't know, a small amount of fallout, but I'd be surprised if it was a lot if you've used that sticky base like that. But I haven't ever come across another primer that's like this, so I don't know if there are other dupes or products out there that you can do that with. I wouldn't recommend just throwing like this on top. I don't know how that would work, but this was designed specifically for that, and that's what makes this so worth it in my opinion. The other way that you can do it is you can take these glittery shades and you can really build them up. And again, it all goes back to a sticky base or a wet brush. So I'm gonna show you with like my Milk primer just so that you can see a different primer. So I'm just popping some of this onto the back of my hand here. I need to like keep an eye on where I've actually popped that down. It's hard to see because it's clear. And then if I now pick up Astral Solstice with my finger, so right here, and if I can see where I've put that down here, this is very hard to see just so you know. You can see that it has transformed that glitter shade into a more wet looking molten shade, yeah? So that is a way that you can create a more opaque formula with those glitter shades with using a more sticky base or like a wetter base. So again, if you wanted to like, I don't know why you would cover this gold with like one of the special shades in terms of opaqueness. That wouldn't, I don't know why you would bother with the gold then, but if you wanted to, instead of putting this gold down, put like say Astral Solstice down, but make it opaque, that's a way that you can do it. Now, if you don't have either of those things, the other thing that you can do is get a brush. This is just a Bdellium Tools shader brush. This one's also quite good actually for a vegan brush because it's a little bit thicker. It's kind of like the Rephr No. 2, but vegan. So this is what you can do. Like you can pick the Astral Solstice up with the brush. You can wet the brush. You're gonna make sure you wanna wet it pretty good. And then that's when you can also create that more opaque kind of creamy formula. Now you can also create that more opaque formula, obviously, using your finger. See that? But if you do that on your lid, you are gonna get fallout. Now you won't get fallout consistently throughout the day, at least from what I have personally found, but you will get fallout quite immediately and probably for the next like 10-ish minutes. So, or while your eyes are like shifting around and you're putting mascara on, etc. So again, do your eyes first if you're gonna do that if you don't want fallout. But if you don't want fallout and you really just find that you still get fallout throughout the day from doing it with your finger, etc., then that's when you need to get your brush and wet it and get like a sticky base, etc. So that's why I really recommend these. So if you have the glittery pat shades and you're finding the fallouts too much and you can't even just do this with it, get yourself the Intensify stick and pop that over the top of your metallic shadow and then tap it on, because you're not going to get that fallout. It's created that sticky base. I think that's kind of it for all my tips and tricks in regards to like how to work with formulas and stuff. Like I have other tips and tricks in regards to like eye shapes and different things you can do with them and like all that kind of thing. But in regards to formulas and especially Pat McGrath formulas, I think that's kind of it. So I'm gonna go and finish up the rest of my makeup and then we'll come back and we will wrap this up, and let's hope to the Lord that you found this helpful in any way, shape or form. Alrighty, this is the finished makeup look, finished eyeshadow look, the whole shebang. I hope that you found this video helpful in any way, shape or form and it wasn't too repetitive and boring from other things that you have seen before. Let me know if you have any questions, want anything more in depth or anything like that in the comments down below. Let me know if you want like more tips and tricks around just like hooded eye stuff as well, happy to do that. Let me know what you want. Let me know what you want, okay? In the comments. But yeah, I do hope that you found it enjoyable in some way, shape or form. That is the end of the video. If you're watching till this point, you know you're absolutely incredible. I truly appreciate you. Thank you so much. Don't forget to give the video a thumbs up, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Let's get to 4K. Let's do it. Let's do it. And yeah, I hope you have an amazing day wherever you are in the world, and I will see you next time. Bye.